It's time to talk Jets football on the Our Football Network. And for the very first time, besides having, of course, Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post or my good friend Jan Levine from RotoWire, who's used to be a season ticket holder for the New York Jets as a co-host for some years, I've finally been able to bring on to this channel an analyst that covers the New York Jets that I know can go toe-to-toe with me on this football team as free agency is just right around the corner and, of course, the draft next month. So let's introduce Matt O'Leary to the channel from the Jet Report on YouTube. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing good, Greg. Thank you so much for having me on. Looking forward to it.
I am looking forward to doing this as well, Matt. This is great. Again, first time I've been able to talk to a fellow Jet fan as an analyst. So this is going to be really cool. You've been building your channel now for about, 5 years now?
Yeah, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. And yeah, just year over year, it keeps getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And, hopefully a winning product just helps it that much even more.
Oh, that's true. That'll be the case. And unfortunately, the news is not where we would like it to be at this point in time. We're recording this at 1 o'clock, a little after 1 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. Still no definitive news on Aaron Rodgers. We're at that point, Matt. We're going to have a lot to cover regarding the team, but obviously we have to start with Rodgers. We're at that point, Matt, where now that it really looks almost, I don't want to say imminent, but almost like it's so close that's when I want to kind of stay away. That's when I want to I don't want to hear nothing. Just tell me when he signs. Tell me when the trade is made, or tell me when he doesn't want to come to New York. But just I don't want to hear it anymore. Not that it's not good for you, because you could just milk this for as long as possible. But you know what I mean as a Jet fan. It's like, come on, just give us the news already.
Yeah, it's been about 3 or 4 days of just anxiety, refreshing online, seeing if you can find the news. But yeah, I not only are we as content creators milking this thing, I think Rodgers is milking it out a little bit too. He's getting his fun in with it, and I don't think we should be surprised. He's a guy who likes to take his time with the decision,
True.
but yeah, sitting on pins and needles over here.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think we should be actually grateful that it's come to this point already. He could have been like, I'm not really ready. Talk to me in June. But yeah, I got to look at the positive side. So what do you think? What is your guess? Again, I think most fans feel, and I have, I think even the media kind of feels that they just got to get this done now, that it just looks too good. The marriage just looks too perfect. This is something now that is something that just has to happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, it kind of feels like for Rodgers that Green Bay wants to move on. They want to, transition and go with Jordan Love, someone who they drafted in the first round a few years ago. Totally makes sense from their perspective. But there's not a really ton of other options for Rodgers other than the Jets. It's pretty much retire or the Jets. And I don't see him leaving all that money on the table. So it just feels like a perfect storm. The waiting is the most stressful part, but I really think this gets done.
And vice versa. I mean, for the Jets, I don't want to hear about Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, seriously, because at this point, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't become part of this team, whoever the quarterback is, if it's a Tannehill, it's a Garoppolo, and we can get into Zach Wilson a little bit, but then it's that much more clear that they are going to have to more potentially depend on Zach at some point, which wouldn't have to be the case if Aaron Rodgers was here for a couple of years. So I got to ask you about Zach. I have probably defended Zach as much as anybody. Not that I'm trying to kiss his ass, not that I'm trying to defend him because I defend every Jet. It's just that I believe when you look at how he's been coached and the time that he's actually had with this organization, I just think that it's too. I do believe it's just too quick to judge him at this point. I think he needs a proper coordinator with experience that's done it successfully, like Hackett. I like the fact that now Hackett's here, and I think if they bring in Aaron Rodgers, I just think it is the perfect situation for Zach to be able to sit behind Rodgers for a year or two. Maybe the Jets behind the scenes see that he's improving, so when the time comes, maybe Rodgers retires, Zach can eventually take over, and I just think that makes it just hopeful that he still has the potential to become a starting quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I think if there was ever a spot for him to be able to salvage this thing and salvage his career, I would think it would be sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, like you said, for a couple years. It's someone that he said he looks up to. They have a relationship. They've talked on the phone before. I agree with you. I think, as you said, that if there was ever a time where he could get another starting gig, I think it would be sitting. But I do think he needs that reset. I don't think he can start for this team going into next year. There's too much pressure. They took that, step. It's nice that they got to 7 wins, but how they fell off at the end of the year, I really think they have to make the playoffs this year coming up. And I don't want to bank that on like praying that Zach figures it out this year. Yeah. I think you sit him back, reset him, and then reevaluate, a couple years down the line when Rodgers is calling it quits.
What did you think also about the whole Mike White situation? Because I honestly didn't think it was really good internally. Maybe Coach Saleh will realize that. And I know he's learning every year. I just didn't think pinning one quarterback against another, which I think was really behind the lines what it looked like was going on. I just didn't think it was really good for the team. I think Mike White is an excellent backup quarterback. Said it last year, even when everybody, of course, the media just praised him beyond belief, which was just, to me, just disgusting how much they praised him. But I just think he is a solid backup. Now, whether or not he stays here or not, that's also going to be a big question, because if Rodgers comes here, I'm not sure it's a good thing for the Jets to keep Mike White along with Zach Wilson. I'm not so sure that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're getting Rodgers, I'd be very surprised if he comes back. I think he would hit the open market and then sign as a backup. That's his role. He's a backup or a spot starter. He can play. He's shown us that, over the last couple of years. He's someone who can play, but unfortunately, he gets injured a lot. He's gotten banged up in back-to-back years. He left the Cincinnati start last year was such a great game for him, but he had to leave that game. There were multiple times where that's happened. And, again, a fine backup, someone who can come in and play in a pinch, but not a long-term answer. It was a tough decision, I think, for Robert Saleh because, after that New England game where they did absolutely nothing offensively, it felt like they needed a spark, and I thought, maybe they go to Zach the following week on a short leash, but he decided to pull the switch. It was hard for me to blame him for making that change with how poorly he was playing, but it was kind of tough to see. I don't know if turmoil is the right word, but it felt like people were picking sides in the locker room. I don't think you want.
No, wearing T-shirts with Mike White on it, it's just, when Zach's supposedly your man, and to just turn, it felt like they were turning on him in just one game. And look, I said at the time, just like you did, but the one thing that I was like was, couldn't they have given, when you looked at all the teams that Zach was playing against, he was like he was going up against all like the really good defenses in the NFL. As soon as he had the opportunity to play like one of the worst defenses in the NFL, they took him out. They put Mike White in. I was like, couldn't you have at least given Zach just a shot against the Bears defense just to see what he could do? But I understood why he did it, just like you. And that's kind of what painted the rest of the story. Let's talk about, we did a mock draft last month real early, and I did not have the Jets pick. Dave Syverson, who's the lead scout at ourlads.com, did. And he went ahead with I believe, taking a look at it, the only lineman chosen, there were 2 linemen actually chosen ahead of this one. So it was the 3rd offensive lineman picked, but it was Skoronski. He went ahead and put Skoronski on the Jets, which I think makes a lot of sense because he could play multiple positions. And obviously, I think that'd be a good thing for the Jets. So what do you think? Do you think that offensive line is definitely still a top priority? If the Jets, again, hold on to that pick, chances are they won't even have it. But if they did.
Yeah, I do. And once Dwayne Brown came back, I saw a lot of people online saying, okay, well, now you don't necessarily have to take offensive tackle at 13. I disagree with that. I don't think you could possibly bank on someone who's 38 years old, coming off an injury. He played hurt the entire year and now is coming off a surgery going into next year. He was okay filling in, but that's not your long-term answer there. I'm absolutely on board with taking an offensive tackle. I like Peter Skoronski a lot. Like you said, he can play multiple positions. He kind of reminds you of AVT because he could play guard or tackle. I think he is one of the safer prospects in this draft. I like him and Paris Johnson a ton on the offensive line. But even if it came down to it, I would even take Broderick Jones, who is my third tackle in this class.
Okay.
At pick 13. I'm comfortable with any of those three guys. I think it's that important to land a tackle of the future in this draft.
Matt, what do you think a fair price is going to be for Rodgers? We know it's definitely going to include that first pick, so they're not going to have that pick if the Rodgers deal is made. What else do you think they're going to have to give up? Keeping in mind that the Jets are also, in a way, giving Green Bay something positive by letting Rodgers leave because of the money. Now, I don't know exactly how much they'd have to be penalized for that cap-wise. I'm not a cap expert. I try not to get into that. I got enough things to do with my life, especially in the world of sports. But I got to believe that it's almost like, well, yeah, it's Aaron Rodgers. We can't be giving you, all this draft capital and players and stuff. Not only is the guy 39 years old, but I mean, your book should open up a little bit, so you should be able to use that and better your team as well. So do you think that the Jets, besides giving up that first round pick, would have to give up a whole lot more?
Honestly, no. And there was even a report earlier in the week from Albert Breer, who was saying that he didn't even think it would take this year's first. He thought that it would be a second and maybe a conditional pick next year. And that's kind of where I am, to be honest with you. I think I'd be surprised if it's definitely a first round pick going back to Green Bay.
I hope you're right.
Just because of the age and the contract that's coming with it. I think that's a really big factor in this. Obviously, when you look at like Aaron Rodgers and what he's done over his career, you would think, okay, yeah, no doubt. And there's been people saying, oh, it's going to take 2 first rounders to get it done. I really don't think it would be that costly because of the age and the contract factor. Now, if it came down to it and it was like, hey, it's just give us for the first rounder this year and that's it, we'll move on, then I'm not saying don't do it because, I think this is that big of a need, but I'd be a little bit surprised if that's what it was. I think it'd be a second this year and then a conditional pick next year that maybe could turn into a first depending on, I don't know, whatever you want to do. If they reach the Super Bowl or if he's on the roster next year, whatever. But I think it's a second this year and a conditional pick next year would be my guess.
That makes me feel even a whole lot better. And again, this is why I want to talk to you because you're dialed in. You got a channel on the Jets. I mean, I could be a Jet fan, and I could be one of 32 teams I cover for the Our Lives Football Network, but you're dialed in even more than I am at this time of year. And so because I was looking at it a little bit with what happened with Russell Wilson last year. And that was just a tremendous package. And I just felt, well, I know he's younger, and I completely get that. But I think we kind of agree that salary cap situation that is going to help the Packers is a big reason why the Jets should not have to give up a whole lot more than what Denver did for
Russell.
For Russell. Okay, So let's go through the rest of this team now and talk about what else did they have to do to improve themselves. The cap situation is kind of where it is. It's not that great. It's not that bad. So, again, you mentioned that Brown is back. It looks like Joyner's not going to be back now after the trade, the impending trade for Clark. That seems like a really nice move. Those are the types of trades that you like to see. You're basically not giving up anything, and you're improving your defensive backfield.
Yeah, they really didn't have to. Like you said, they basically gave up nothing. It's a 7th round pick next year. Joe Douglas, I think, has done a good job of using those late picks to, either maneuver in the draft or to gain other assets, which this is a position of need. I think safety, when you look at it going into this year, Joyner, I wasn't expecting to come back, and I think he struggled, especially down the stretch for the Jets last year. And what I like about Clark is his versatility. He could play either strong safety or free safety. His reps are pretty much down the middle with how if he's in the box or playing back deep. Now, me personally, I think I prefer him in his role as a box safety, which is kind of similar to what Jordan Whitehead does. So you could cut Jordan Whitehead potentially and free up another, I think it's $7.25 million
Wow.
the cap.
You think that's a possibility?
I do think it's a possibility.
Wow.
Especially if they at the NFL Combine took on a ton of meetings with different prospects at the safety position. I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to get a little bit younger there. But even if they want, I mean, theoretically, you could play both Clark and Whitehead back,
Sure.
and it could be fine. But I wouldn't say that I would be shocked if they decided to, free up that additional $7 million. Have
Okay.
Clark, who I think is $4 million against the cap, so you save about $3 million there, and then you have the rookie on a rookie deal come in and play free safety.
Yeah, the one part on defense that I talked about once the season was over that I felt that the Jets really had to improve on more than anything, and I think we're kind of in the right area, is they have to get that player, and whether you even want to call him a hybrid, you have to get that linebacker, safety, DB in the middle of the defense that could help them with game-changing plays. There just wasn't enough of that last year. I mean, it was killing me watching their defense, who, for the most part, did a solid job, no question about it. But you cannot become an elite defense in the NFL if you're not getting turnovers. And it was just driving you crazy week after week without the turnovers. They really need someone in the middle of that defense that can kind of disrupt things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. If there's any sort of criticism you want to put on the Jets defense last year, which was a really good unit and a very much improved unit, it was definitely the turnover game for me. They just didn't have enough of those guys who could take the football away. And I think that's something that they should be looking for, continue to look to add, whether it's, at safety, someone who's playing back in more of the ball hawking role there, or coming up, and making plays in the middle of the field. I agree. I think that's absolutely something that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh should be trying to solve this year.
All right. Also on defense, you take a look up front, and they do have to get either Carl Lawson has either have to be one of those players that needed a full year off from his injury to come back and be the player he was, or they're going to need just more edge help. They can't go back into the season this year and expect to, again, be a dominant, disruptive defense if they don't have the type of pressure like we just saw from the Eagles. One of the things that the Eagles did really well, besides, of course, having waves of players, and I think the Jets have waves of players, but there just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough game-changing, edge-rushing sacks and pressures and things of that nature, and they have to step up that department as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think maybe part of that could be giving guys like Bryce Huff a bigger role who really didn't play all that much, especially early on in the year. I think that he was a healthy scratch the first 3 games of the year, but in a limited role, I thought he did a really nice job of coming in and disrupting plays and hitting the quarterback. And, you remember the hit on Josh Allen at the end of that game in the upset.
Oh, yeah. That was, you played a game. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. A huge play. And I think that might be a nice internal fix, along with guys like, rookies who I thought were okay, and Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens developing and taking that next step. So I think that's
absolutely
definitely something that is just going to improve with development a little bit. I think those guys are, still young players coming into their own, but I expect all 3 of the guys I just listed off to take that next step in their growth.
At linebacker, you have Alexander and Quincy Williams are free agents. And honestly, I don't know. I think this might be one of the situations where Joe Douglas and Coach Saleh will sit in a room and Saleh will talk about how much he loves certain players. And I love these guys. And, Quincy Williams, I love him. And I think Joe is going to have to be like, yeah, but I think Quincy Williams is a nice player at league minimum. But if he's going to get a contract, which I think he might, if somebody out there wants to pay him something that is just a little bit above, I think what we should afford to pay. I just don't think he's that type of player. He's fast. He can make tackles, but he's another player that does not make game-changing plays. And I just don't think that the Jets should overpay in any way, shape, or form for Quincy Williams.
I agree with you. I like him more in like a rotational role. I don't like him as an every down linebacker, but I think the Jets really value him. And obviously, with his brother is due a new contract extension, and I'm sure they want to keep him happy. So it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if they did that. To be honest with you, I actually prefer Quan over Quincy, and my personal preference, I would rather bring back Quan than Quincy, but I don't think that's likely. I think the Jets are gonna end up bringing Quincy back, and hopefully not for too much money, because like I said, I don't like him as an every down player.
Yeah. And then some of those rotational guys up front, Rankins and Thomas and Shepard and Curry, free agents. Tell you the truth, I mean, Rankins would be the only guy that I would try to bring back. I think they could let the other guys go unless it's for league minimum.
Yeah, 100%. I think Rankins was really nice for this team last year, and if they don't bring him back, interior defensive line is a sneaky need for this.
Yes.
Outside of Quinn and Williams, they really don't have a lot there. So
Agreed.
I think they would be aggressive to bring him back, and honestly, maybe add in the mid rounds of the NFL draft too.
C.J. Mosley. Here's a player that he's a polarizing player for me. He's somebody that, see, I'm not stupid. I understand why the coaches and the players like him so much and why he's respected around the league. But let's just be honest. First of all, I think a lot of it has to do, too, with the fact that he's playing out of position in a way, and he's playing underweight. This was not the player the Jets signed a few years back in a 3-4 role, a little bit heavier, making plays, in coverage. He doesn't make plays in coverage anymore. All he does, he's a great leader, and he makes tackles, but he doesn't do anything else. And so that's another player where it's like, okay, fine, you want your leader there. I'm okay with it. You guys know more than I do how valuable you think he is to that defense. I'm good with that, but I don't want to overrate the player, which I think he is clearly overrated.
Yeah, I think they're gonna restructure his deal, because how they have it set up, he is due a crazy amount of money against the cap. And I agree, he's not that player that they signed in 2019 anymore. I think he's still a serviceable linebacker, but I think they need more help at that position. And he's getting older as well. I would keep him around. Like I said, I think he's a good starter. He's not, phenomenal. He's not the guy that they were signing and giving a record-breaking linebacker deal to.
Yeah.
I think he's, a solid player. Again, restructure him, get that cap number down, and I'm good with keeping him around. But I agree. I don't think you could bring him back at that same price point that he's at right now currently.
All right. On offense, we talked a little bit about the offensive line, but just let's solidify this. So Fant, I mean, sure, it'd be nice to have Fant back as somebody that can play a couple different positions, but it does look like Mitchell is going to have a really good chance to play a lot. Becton, I even said it last year. There were some fans getting a little bit excited about Becton. It's like, look, the kid's got to play. And until the kid starts playing football games during the regular season, I don't want to talk about him. I just don't think he's a part of this offense just yet. I think he's a bonus now at this point. If he can go out there and play, hey, man, that's great. It's like God just dropped a present. The Angels just dropped a present for us, and great, terrific. But they can't rely on that. Maybe that's also part of why Brown is back as an insurance policy. But what else do you think they need to do on the offensive line? Do you think that they should? Do you think they let McGovern go? And do you think that they should try to upgrade that? Or do you think they should at least bring McGovern back as long as he's not asking for too much?
Yeah, McGovern's one of the tougher ones for me this year, to be honest with you. I think I lean towards upgrading there, though. He's coming off a contract that was an AAV of $9 million a year. And with the current market, I think he's going to get a raise. And I'm not necessarily comfortable giving him much more than what he was at. So if that's the case, I would look to go in another direction. Whether that's through the NFL draft, there's a couple of prospects that I like there. John Michael Schmitz being one of those guys from Minnesota. But even if you're going a veteran stopgap route and drafting maybe a later round guy that you're going to sit and develop for a year or two before giving him the starting role, I just think I would maybe look to move on there. Because like I said, I'm not really looking to give him much more money than where he was at. And I think he was just okay for the Jets. I don't think he was great. I don't think he was awful, but probably an area you could improve.
Yeah, agreed. He's just a solid player that if you've got talent around him, it makes him look better. If you don't have talent around him, it makes him look worse. That's just the type of player
Yep.
he is. Okay, so what do you think overall, though? Because we started the interview regarding the offensive line and a potential draft spot. And now if it does, work out with the Jets could hold on to that first pick, do you see when you talk about picking a tackle, now all of a sudden, do you see Skoronski, because he's got the ability to play inside and out? I think I'd rather go that route. But if the Jets go ahead and zero in on a tackle, well, you have Max Mitchell. What if Becton does come back, and now you have a surplus, and you have Dwayne Brown? Now you have all of a sudden all these tackles and not enough, say, maybe, in center or a couple of other key backups. So if they do go offensive line, wouldn't it make a little bit more sense to have somebody that could play both inside and out?
Yeah, I definitely think you can make that case. And if Skoronski's there, I'd pull the trigger on it because of the versatility, like you said. Definitely. But unfortunately, what we saw last year was that it might look like you have depth initially, and then all these guys get
yes, good point.
Yep. You just listed off Mitchell injured, Becton injured, and Brown was injured, and Fant too, who you had.
That's right.
Was hurt. So yeah, it's a really fine line that you have to walk here if you're Joe Douglas, because like I said, last year he thought he was good on the offensive line. He bolstered it up, said, all right, we have guys we're comfortable with, and he lost them all. Now the odds of that happening again are pretty slim, but you want to make sure you protect yourself also.
And look, we're only talking about the first pick. They could easily use one of their other later picks on an offensive guard or another tackle. So, which I believe they actually should do. I think they should at least add minimum 2 new offensive linemen, and maybe even 3, depending on who they want to bring back, because there's only maybe a couple of those guys that played last year that are free agents right now, the backup guys that I would even entertain bringing back on the cheap.
Yeah, like someone like Nate Herbig, I liked. I thought he filled in well. Like if you could get him back at a relatively cheap deal for depth, and he has center experience too, so that adds a little versatility there. But you're right. Other than that, there's not many guys that I'm looking to bring back that they had for depth last year.
All right, skill positions. So Breece Hall, it was just the biggest disaster. It's just so typical. I know Jet fans, I know what we all felt when he went down, of course. And then when the season was over and you looked at the running backs in the NFL who were injured and lost for the season, there were like 3 of them. And one of them happened to be the Jets. And just when the Jets found a big-time difference maker at running back, he went out and got hurt. The question is how impactful will he be when he gets back? And hopefully, he will not re-injure that knee. So the question is, based on what they have right now, do you think they should add another player to the mix? Or do you think that with an Aaron Rodgers, hopefully, an improved offensive line, that they have enough from what we saw last year as far as the backups that they'll be okay if something happened to Hall again?
I think they would be okay. Now, like in a perfect world, sure, you could add someone, but only have so many picks and you only have so much cap space. So if you're bringing in like Aaron Rodgers, which feels like pretty likely right now, I think you can get by with Michael Carter and Bam Knight as your duo to hold down the fort while Breece is kind of getting things back. I think he'll come on slowly, maybe the first month or so, but by somewhere around October, hit his stride and look like the player we saw at the beginning of last year before he got injured. Michael Carter really struggled last year.
Yeah, that was strange. Yeah,
it was. But I really liked him as a rookie. I think he's a bounce back candidate this year. I don't want to give up on him yet. And Bam Knight looked like a nice find as an undrafted free agent. So, maybe if you find, a veteran on like a minimum contract you want to add, like someone like a Ty Johnson, whether it's him or someone else like that, of a cheap veteran, fine. But I wouldn't expect them to, pay significant money or a significant pick.
Agreed.
For the position.
Tight end, I think they're pretty set because this is going to be a big year for Ruckert. That's the guy that they really hope. Now, whether it's this year, and I'm not saying a complete transformation, but you want to see significant progress because of the fact he did pretty much nothing last year. And that happens. Tight end, very difficult position for rookies to assimilate in the NFL. So I just want to see some progress there. And then hope that by next year, 24, that he's like the guy. He's the guy that they feel can be their tight end of the future. Because that is a big part of this offense that they run and that they're going to continue to run even with Hackett. They must have some quality because Azuma and Conklin are nice fringe tight ends, but they're not gonna. Nobody's staying up at night as far as defensive coordinators worrying about those guys. So just have got to hope that Ruckert becomes that guy.
100%. I think you said it, best. Conklin and Uzama are kind of just holding down the fort until a guy like Ruckert is ready. They're serviceable tight ends, but not game changers. And, I think Ruckert has that kind of potential. You didn't use him a lot last year, but when they did at the end of the year in the Miami game, I thought he looked great as a blocker, which is, a good sign. But even at Ohio State, I thought he was an underutilized pass catcher. And, maybe it's unbiased. I'm a Long Island kid also, like Jeremy Ruckert is. So I have a special place in my heart for him. But he was one of my favorite tight ends coming out last year. I do think there's untapped potential there. And like you said, that's a position that sometimes these guys come on slowly. It takes them 2 or 3 years. Like you look at Dalton Schultz or Dawson Knox, but it took them to about year 2 or year 3 before we started to see them look like the players, that they are now. So I'm not worried about it, and they have the veterans who could hold down the fort until he takes that step.
And that wide receiver, in the Jets had a video, I think it was yesterday, on a Jigba and a great combine. And the Jets, would they pick a Jigba? And I actually commented on it. I was like, oh, yeah, let's bring in another wide receiver. Why don't we? I mean, come on. I mean, I don't really believe that this team needs another wide receiver. Not to say that if a guy is sitting there and he's clearly the best player on your board, you don't take him. But the offensive line is such a big part of what this offense can do that I think you can definitely win with Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. And even Denzel Mims might improve his game if Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback. Corey Davis is a guy that I would actually think about moving on from. I'm sick of him not playing all the time. I'm also a little bit weary about him being just somebody you can count on. I mean, he does make plays. I know he's tough. And he's, again, one of those guys that you, as a coach, you love to have. But overall, I think he's a little overpriced. So maybe if they move on from Davis, they've already moved on, at least for now, for Berrios. That's another question that we can talk about. But what do you think overall about what they should be doing at wide receiver?
Yeah, I think they could probably use one more, but I don't want to use the first round pick on wide receiver. I agree. Corey Davis, if you cut him, that frees up $10 million or $10.5 million. And to me, that's a no brainer.
Yes.
He's just missed too much time. And when he was on the field, he was too inconsistent. He was one of the more frustrating Jets for me because the highs were really nice. I thought he had a lot of clutch catches and, early on looked like Zach's favorite target, but then he also had his weekly holding penalty and a big drop. And it's like, can this guy just figure it out? And staying on the field has been an issue for him dating back to his days in Tennessee. So I'm not opposed to maybe looking for a veteran, like number 3 option wide receiver. I'm not saying, you spend out $20 million on a number 1. You have Garrett Wilson, who looks like a number 1 receiver. You have Elijah Moore, who I think you move him to the slot full time. I think he's going to be great there. They need one more guy for that starting trio. And I think you could find that on the veteran market.
And do you think that's the reason, partly, of why Berrios was a casualty, was because they had time when the season was over to kind of look at things and realized Elijah Moore has got to play this particular role that Braxton is playing. And as much as we like Braxton, it's just not worth it what he's making, and we've got to find a way to get Elijah Moore productive with this offense. Or is there something about this move that just says, oh, yeah, it's just temporary, they'll bring him back?
No, I think they are going to, stay away and have Elijah, have that bigger role in the slot. And, looking for depth and just looking at and reading the tea leaves, like if they bring in Aaron Rodgers, would it really surprise you that much if they brought his friend Randall Cobb on like a veteran minimum deal for like
that's true.
To be their 4th or I'm not saying to start, but to be like their 4th or 5th wide receiver?
Yeah.
And that's, $2 million versus $6 million. That's a big gap. And when you are tied up against the cap this year, like the Jets are going into this offseason, that money matters. And unfortunately with Berrios, he really wasn't as much of a factor in the receiving game this past year. And then I thought he kind of regressed as a returner. I thought too many times he was letting the ball bounce inside the 10 and they were pinning him way back deep. And that big drop in the Minnesota game, I think, was kind of the beginning of the end there for him. So
okay.
Sad to see him go. Fan favorite, but I think it was necessary.
And we're going to close. You were mentioning special teams, so let's talk about that because Zerline right now is somebody that the Jets are going to have to take a look at. I have no problem bringing him back for another year. As far as man, I have been trying to give excuses and, oh, I see some development and he's getting a little bit better. Honestly, I've had enough of him. And being from New Jersey, and you being from the area, I want who I believe is going to be the top punter in this draft class, who I think should be, and that's Adam Korsak. I would love to have a weapon at punter, somebody that can pin your opposing offenses in the 20-yard line, in the 10-yard line, without having to worry about it constantly going into the end zone, which is what Braden Mann does. So I think that's a spot, to tell you the truth, that I think the Jets should actually use one of their 5th round draft picks on, one of their even 4th if they want to. I think it's that important to their defense and their game plan to find a weapon like that.
I definitely think you have to move on from Braden Mann. I think he's been kind of bad, especially the last 2 years has really been an issue for him. I think you could find an upgrade, like you said, in the draft, an undrafted free agent of some other veteran. It's just, like you said, he cost them too many games, too many shanks, line drive punts into the end zone. Another guy who frustrates me to no end on this team. But Zerloin, I think, was a really nice find for them last year.
Yeah.
They brought him in, and that really stabilized the kicking position. So I would do, anything I can to bring him back. They rotated way too many kickers over the last 2 years. They couldn't find that guy. To me, Zerloin was good enough to be the guy this year. Bring him back. And you're right, find a new punter, because I don't think Mann's getting it done.
Yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't even mind if they actually signed a rookie kicker, put him on the practice squad, and let him develop the entire season. And maybe he could, if they like him, maybe he becomes your future. Because at some point, next year or two, they're going to have to find another place kicker, you would think. I don't know. Sometimes these kickers last a lot longer than you think, especially when Brady's lasting to nearly 50 years old. Kickers can definitely do it as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. But again, as you mentioned, it is a couple of positions that just drive you crazy as a Jet fan that they have to eventually fix. And if that means even spending a late round draft pick, I'm okay with it. But make sure you get it right. All right, Matt. So I really appreciate you taking your time out. Things, of course, even though it's not specifically at this point in time busy, we know any second now, any minute now, and we certainly hope so. News could come across either positive or negative about Aaron Rodgers. I would expect, to tell you the truth, that if they are going to actually make a deal for Rodgers, I think that they'll make it before the 15th.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think even, Monday is is the start of the legal tampering period, which they could start talking to free agents then. I have a hard time thinking it even gets that far. I think you got to know by then, but it's this waiting game, man. That's all we're doing right now.
All right, Matt. Again, want to let everybody know it's the Jet Report, correct, on YouTube?
Yep, the Jet Report at Matt O'Leary. And
I'm going to have a link in the description area here of this video, so you can check that out. I also have on the ticker your Twitter handle, so obviously check that out, Matt. And is it every day, or you just tell me before you let us go? How do you post on the channel regarding your videos and people actually seeing you talk about the Jets?
Yeah, so it's daily content over there. We do some longer, once or twice a week, we do longer form content, whether it's a live stream or a podcast. But every day something's going up. If it's a 5-minute video, just covering whatever the biggest news of the day is. So make sure to check it out.
And of course, hey, you know what? What is this, day 4 or 5 of the Aaron Rodgers watch?
Yep, day 4 right now.
Day 4.
It's going on forever, though.
Let's hope it doesn't get to day 5. Thanks, Matt.
No problem. Thanks, Greg.